Welcome to my channel. My focus today is going to be on the play Othello by William Shakespeare. I'm going to begin by reading an extract from Act 5, Scene 2. Othello. That handkerchief which I so loved and gave thee, thou gavest to Cassio. No, by my life and soul, send for the man, ask for him. By heaven, I saw my handkerchief in his hand. O perjured woman, thou dost stone thy heart. I saw the handkerchief. He found it then. I never gave it to him. Send for him hither. Let him confess the truth. A handkerchief. Is it possible that something so banal, so ordinary, could lead to murder? The ardent Shakespeare Othello chose to put that handkerchief on the cover of their text. The title of my talk is The Banality of Evil and the Fragility of the Self. Banality. The fact of being banal, commonplace, unoriginal, ordinary. To what extent would you agree that evil is presented as banal in this play? Iago may be seen as commonplace and ordinary. He presents himself as everyone's best friend, joking and laughing on the shores of Cyprus. No one could guess that he is actually spreading deceit, lies for his own benefit. He is a master actor who pretends to be everyone's best friend, and he seems to be banal, an ordinary sort of person. But he's actually pitting one character against another to destroy them in turn. The epithet most often associated with Iago is honest Iago. Yet the play shows that early on there's a dark underside to Iago. The play opens in the streets of Venice with a conversation between Rodrigo and Iago. The atmosphere is one of secrecy and distrust, with accusations and counter-accusations. Clearly, Iago has a chip on his shoulder, as he has been passed over for promotion as Othello's second-in-command in favour of Cassio. He is bitterly resentful. I know my price. I am worth no worse a place. This has often been presented as a motive for revenge. Rodrigo, alluding to Othello, says, I would not follow him then. Iago replies, I follow him to serve my turn upon him. and this establishes the theme of revenge. This is reiterated in his first soliloquy, which culminates in the flagrant admission of his lack of sincerity. I am not what I am. Act 1, Scene 1. This is the ominous and blasphemous parody of God's self-definition in Exodus. I am what I am. This puts him firmly on the side of evil, since he defines himself as the opposite of God. As if to enhance this idea, the opening scenes of the play take place in the dark. Iago immediately puts a plan to get revenge on Othello into action. He takes Rodrigo with him to awaken Brabantio, Othello's new father-in-law, in the middle of the night. Iago urges Rodrigo, rouse him, make after him, poison his delight. The word poison defines his modus operandi and suggests his inherent maliciousness, his glee in destroying the happiness of others. Iago and Rodrigo's voices come out of the shadows as they stand in the dark. A black ram is tapping your white ewe. He uses vivid animal imagery to create chaos and upset the old man. Iago's language, filled with animalistic imagery, reveals how easily words can be used to dehumanize and degrade individuals, contributing to the play's tragic outcome. Iago's mood, the milieu that he creates as he moves closer to achieving revenge, is one of chaos. It is at the opposite end of the scale to the order Othello creates at the beginning of the play. In Cyprus, Iago creates confusion by ringing the bells loudly when he wants to incriminate Cassio, and he ensures that Othello is woken up so that he can see the wrongdoing in Cassio without realizing that he, Iago, has constructed this wrongdoing in order to discredit Cassio. Thus, chaos, confusion, and fear may be seen as some of the defining characteristics of evil. Iago can be interpreted allegorically as a medieval vice figure associated with darkness and poison. He uses words like monstrous birth and divinity of hell in Act 1, Scene 3. Iago's first soliloquy culminates in, I have it. It is engendered. Hell and night must bring this monstrous birth to the world's light. Here, Iago imagines the destruction he will bring about, and clearly the language Shakespeare uses recalls that which may have been used by a medieval vice figure to indicate evil intentions or destructive actions, as it is associated with hell and thus the devil. But perhaps Iago is more than an evil caricature. It is possible to argue that he is an evil force in our world. In Iago, evil can indeed appear banal, ordinary. He spreads deceit and lies. He is the master actor who pretends to be ordinary, everyone's best friend, urging Cassio to take just one drink to honour the general and his new wife, and not listening to Cassio's protests, but he is actually bent on taking revenge on Cassio, ostensibly because he got the job he wanted. But this is hardly sufficient to warrant wholesale destruction that he perpetuates. He ends up giving himself false reasons why he is so jealous, in order to work himself up further. He tells himself that he suspects that Othello has had an affair with his wife, Emilia, and claims that he even suspects Cassio with his nightcap too. There's absolutely no evidence in the text to support this claim. The critic Coleridge has a phrase for what Iago is doing here. He calls it the motive hunting of motiveless malignity. At its core, malignity refers to a deep-seated ill will, malevolence, or intense spite. It implies a deliberate intention to harm others, and more than that, an enjoyment of it. Some Shakespearean protagonists have motive, but Iago's motive, his resentment at not getting a job promotion, seems banal. Beneath his everyday chatter and supposed friendliness, he is malicious and malignant. He enjoys destroying the happiness of others. He envies the marriage of Othello and Desdemona, and is determined to destroy the life and peace it represents. Shakespeare shows how everyday actions and interactions are often fueled by mundane motivations like jealousy and manipulation, something many people have experienced. How this can escalate, though, into catastrophic events is something that we need to explore in the text. Shakespeare uses seemingly insignificant details like a misplaced handkerchief or a casual conversation, and shows how these can be twisted and used to destroy lives. How is good presented in the play? Which characters would you associate with goodness in Act 1? In Act 1, Othello, who is spoken about in such reductive language by Iago, actually portrays himself in quite a different light when the audience sees his actions and hears his words. Even when Iago has enraged Brabantio and his family and friends, so that they are running armed through the streets of Venice in pursuit of Othello, Othello remains supremely calm. Not I must be found, my parts, my title, and my perfect soul shall manifest me rightly. This was Act 1, Scene 2. He advises both his men and Brabantio's, keep up your bright swords, for the dew will rust them. Othello presents himself as confident, self-assured in himself and in how others perceive him. He defends himself before the Senate with aplomb. That I have taken away this old man's daughter, it is most true. True, I have married her. Othello is a master storyteller. He, the Duke himself, is swayed by Othello's narrative. I think this tale would win my daughter too. The heart of the tragedy lies in the interaction between Iago and Othello. Othello and Desdemona, as well as Iago and Desdemona, Iago and Cassio. Perhaps the key to this quadrangle is Iago. The common denominator in this quadrangle lies in the fragility of human beings, the second half of my topic. The psychological analysis of Iago reveals a self-loathing so strong that the joys and strengths of others, as he says of Cassio, for example, that he hath a daily beauty that makes me ugly. This self-loathing leads to misogyny and racism. He has a real loathing of human beings in his tortured envy and jealousy, and he reduces love to lust and all women to whores. Every aspect of humanity is poisoned by Iago. On the shores of Cyprus, even the courteous niceties of Cassio taking Desdemona by the hand are viewed in a reductive way by a scheming Iago. With as little a web as this will I ensnare as great a fly as Cassio. In the play, the action is moved away from civilized Venice to Cyprus, which seems to represent chaos and the wilderness with the threat of war. It turns out that the confusion they created, just like Iago's words and actions, was only a false gaze to distract the Venetians. The war is over before it begins, with the Turkish fleet destroyed in a storm. We soon discover that the real wilderness, the real war and savagery, is inside Othello, the psychomachia, the internal struggle within the soul between good and evil. When Othello arrives in Cyprus, Desdemona is his fair warrior, his soul's joy. Their love is true and natural. She sees his visage in her mind. She loves the complex, interesting person that he is. But all too soon, he becomes the poisoned victim of the spider. And he is caught in the net as Iago gleefully plots his revenge on both Cassio and Othello, constructing fake scenarios that he can turn to his advantage. Divinity of hell clearly indicates his conscious choice. Like Milton's Satan, another great poem, Paradise Lost, where Satan exclaims, "Evil, be thou my good." Iago determines to pour this pestilence in his ear, that she, Desdemona, repeals him for her body's lust, for Cassio. And in this way, using poisonous thoughts and images, he plans to mangle truth and corrupt and misconstrue the words that carry it. As with Ulysses, in Dante's famous poem called Hell, the ultimate implication of the play, Othello, is that Iago represents the tempter's voice, using lies to mislead and corrupt the goodness of others. Thus, Shakespeare uses these elements to define the chilling lack of scruples in the most duplicitous and treacherous character in the play, Iago. He says of the innocent Desdemona, "So will I turn her virtue into pitch, and out of her own goodness make a net that shall enmesh them all." Again, his lack of moral scruples, the image of the spider injecting its poison into the victim, is paramount. At first, Othello resists Iago's manipulation, clinging to his love for Desdemona, for she had eyes and she chose me. Act 3, Scene 3. But Iago continues to clip the wings of his freedom and convert his frankness into suspicion, urging him to look to your wife, observe her well with Cassio. In Venice, they do let God see the pranks they dare not show their husbands. Othello's fragility is evident, as he is not familiar with Venetian culture, and he cannot deny all the poisonous thoughts that are poured into his tormented imagination. Iago batters relentlessly at Othello's insecurities. All his previous life, before his marriage to Desdemona, he was exposed only to war and masculine comradeship. Learning to trust and communicate with his fellow soldiers. And in this world, he was hugely successful. When he falls in love with Desdemona in his middle-aged, war-centered life, he takes a huge risk. As a relationship with a beautiful young Venetian noblewoman and a middle-aged soldier seems unlikely. And yet, we are asked to believe that their love is genuine and natural. And we do believe this until Iago's constant undermining of Othello takes hold of him, and in pathetic bewilderment, he becomes filled with a mortifying sense of inferiority, as his belief in Iago's words increases, and he considers all the reasons why he could have lost her. Haply, because I'm black, and have not those soft parts of conversation that chamberers have. Or he agonizes over whether his age could be a factor against him, and continues to torment himself. Oh, the curse of marriage, that we can call these delicate creatures ours, and not their appetites. Clearly, his beautiful, inherent poetic language slides away to mimic the misogynistic, sexist language of Iago, filled with base and reductive animal imagery. I had rather be a toad and live upon the vapour of a dungeon than keep a corner in the thing I love for others' uses. In this way, Shakespeare depicts the slippery slope of suspicion, as we see how quickly and easily suspicion can spiral out of control, especially when fueled by Iago's cunning. Yet, as he continually swings between his disgust and repugnance and his love for Desdemona as he sees her, his reaction changes. Oh, if she be false, oh, then heaven mocks itself. I'll not believe it. Act 3, Scene 3. It is at this moment, ironically, that Desdemona drops the handkerchief in an attempt to relieve the pain of Othello's purported headache, giving Iago an opportunity to capitalize on this once Emilia decides to make a gift of it to please Iago's waywardness. Pushed over the edge, Othello is filled with a horrifying sense of loss, agonizing over poisonous, adverse sexual images of Cassio with Desdemona that Iago pours into his ear. When his friend, who has a reputation for being honest, tells him this, he is tormented by his story. His entire life falls apart, and he can no longer recover his sense of wholeness as he bids farewell to his former heroic life. Farewell the plumed troop and the big wars that make ambition virtue. With horror, he faces the inevitable collapse of his tranquil mind. His words conclude with, Othello's occupations gone, as he reflects on the completeness of his fall and the total loss of his identity. Clearly, Othello's noble character, initially associated with heroic ideals of war and leadership, is ultimately undone by the banality of jealousy and manipulation. Yet, despite these agonizing doubts, he still hopes his friend is deceiving him, and he angrily demands ocular proof. Othello is a play about love and loss, as well as loss of love and lack of love. Clearly, Iago is unable to comprehend love. He sees it only as lust. His sneer, how satisfied, my lord? Would you, the supervisor, grossly gape on, behold her topped? These inflammatory images work like poison on Othello's imagination, together with his fabricated story of Cassio's dream of Desdemona and his suggestion that she was holding the handkerchief that Othello gave her as a gift. Iago's manipulation exploits ordinary, everyday occurrences. He uses a lost handkerchief and Othello's jealousy over Cassio to sow seeds of doubt and suspicion. Pushed to an extreme, there is a farewell litany to the old Othello, and a frightful, dreadful new Othello is conjured up. All my fond love, thus do I blow to heaven. 'Tis gone. Arise, black vengeance, from thy hollow cell. Othello kneels to swear vengeance against his wife in a blasphemous vow in which he rejects his high-prized Christianity, hardening himself against his love. By yond marble heaven, in a dreadful parody of a marriage ceremony, Iago kneels beside him and ironically pledges himself to wronged Othello's service. Let him command, and to obey shall be what bloody work soever. Act 3, Scene 3. The antithesis between command and obey heightens the irony of this unholy alliance, as Iago is actually the one in command. And Iago continues to taunt Othello mercilessly and savagely, pushing him to the brink of madness, until Othello is so distraught he falls into an epileptic fit, muttering frenziedly, "Lie with her, lie on her, noses, ears, and lips. Is it possible?" His emotional breakdown is mirrored in the breakdown of his use of language, highlighting a disturbing obsession with sensuality, signaling Iago's growing control over Othello. Once again, evil is depicted as enjoying the downfall of others in the ironic turn of phrase, "Work on my medicine, work." And in his chilling and complete lack of empathy, taunting him with being a cuckold the moment he begins to recover from his faint. Ironically, Othello's language becomes increasingly Iago-like. The heroic, dignified, and poetic prose of his earlier language is now replaced by the voice of Iago, with his misogynistic comments and appeals to the devil. His use of animal imagery begins to accumulate. In Othello's mouth, Desdemona now becomes a fair devil, and he strikes her in public in front of the Venetian envoy, treating her like a prostitute, and Emilia as the madam of a brothel. This highlights once more the evil of victimization, this time from gender to gender, with the victimization of women. This is a far cry from Othello, who saw Desdemona as his soul's joy once. Othello's words when he is alone contemplating his wife are chilling. In Act 3, Scene 3, he actually visualizes a time of not loving Desdemona. Excellent wretch, perdition catch my soul, but I do love thee. And when I love thee not, chaos is come again. Once Othello has allowed the influence of Iago to take hold, the play seems to move relentlessly and blindly towards its tragic conclusion. He coldly orders her to prepare for bed. In the gathering dark, there is great pathos in the presentation of Emilia and Desdemona, whose very gender heightens their fragility and vulnerability. Although Emilia seems more worldly wise than Desdemona, they are comfortable chatting openly to each other from their different perspectives. The innocent Desdemona doubting that there are such women that betray their husbands in this way. Emilia cynically acknowledging that she might betray her husband for all the world. The sheer honesty of their exchange is touching. There are few paths open to the disinherited Desdemona. In her anguish, she begs Iago to plead with Othello on her behalf. He plays the role of the sympathetic friend, urging her to be patient, whilst coldly planning her murder for his own satisfaction. Desdemona instinctively seems to foresee her death, as the song of the betrayed woman sung by Barbary before her death will not go from her mind. Yet she asks Emilia to put her wedding sheets on the bed in the hope that this will soften her husband. Emilia is far more aware of the injustices to women meted out by men, and is more prepared to fight for justice. Tragically and ironically, as Othello moves towards murdering Desdemona, he presents this to himself as justice, telling himself that she has to die, else she will betray more men. His arrogance, portraying himself as taking the moral high ground, is as evident as her innocence and enhances the sense of pathos. Emilia's speech is a passionate defense of wives against men's double standards and a plea for human recognition. As she wakes, Desdemona asks simply for him to come to bed, but he attacks her, accusing her of having given the handkerchief to Cassio. She remains absolutely honest, arguing the truth. He found it then. I never gave it to him. Send for the man, ask him. No, his mouth is stopped. Honest Iago hath taken order for it. In the face of deceit and ignorance, Othello misinterprets her tears as love for Cassio rather than horror at her predicament. Her language changes from attempts at reasoning to a more emotional terror. In terror, she pleads for her life. Oh, banish me, my lord, but kill me not. Kill me tomorrow, let me live tonight. But while I say one prayer. He proceeds ruthlessly, deaf to her pleas. His former abuse of her, calling her a strumpet, explodes in a rage, and he murders her, smothering her and finally silencing her. When Emilia comes in and reports that Cassio is wounded and Rodrigo killed, Desdemona's dying voice is heard, ringing with truth. Falsely, falsely murdered. From here, the entire plot is unravelled, as it slowly dawns on her that her husband is behind the catastrophe. My husband? That she was false to wedlock? My husband? My husband say that she was false. Act 5, Scene 2. Commanded on her life to be silent, she refuses and fills the stage with her voice. She defies her husband and claims her right to speak. Twill out, I, peace, no. I will speak as liberal as the north wind. Let heaven and men and devils, let them all, cry shame against me, yet I'll speak. Where Desdemona had stood firmly for moral continuance in the private world, Emilia's speech rings out with truth and becomes the powerful enabler of moral restoration in the public world. In this way, truth and goodness gather force, ultimately diminishing and silencing evil. Demand me nothing. From this time forth, I never will speak word. Evil is defiant to the end, and utterly without remorse, yet finally silenced. The final moments of the play show a horrifying epiphany for Othello. Oh, ill-starred wench, pale as thy smock, when we shall meet at Compt, This look of thine will hurl my soul from heaven, and fiends will snatch it. Cold, cold, my girl, even like chastity. Oh, Desdemona, dead, Desdemona, dead. Oh, oh, oh. In the end, he recovers his control of language, giving him a measure of greatness. He claims to have loved not wisely, but too well, of being one not easily jealous, but being wrought, perplexed in the extreme, of one whose hand, like the base Indian, threw away a pearl richer than all his tribe. Othello finally grasps fully the extent of his betrayal of Desdemona and is filled with remorse. Of one whose subdued eyes, albeit unused to the melting mood, drop tears as fast as the Arabian trees their medicinal gum. Set you down this, he asks of those who witness these events, that in Aleppo once, where a malignant turbaned Turk beat a Venetian and traduced the state, I took by the throat this circumcised dog and smote him thus. Again, his concern is to implement justice. He realizes at last that the justice he wrought upon Desdemona was a false justice, and that his actions here in killing himself restore truth to justice and complete the tragedy. Cassio's final judgment is, "This did I fear, for he was great of heart." In the last act of the play, the women, although physically frail, are mentally strong, providing a moral voice and restoring truth privately and publicly. Othello finds the courage at last to repudiate the evil that took hold of him and execute justice on himself, arousing pity and fear in the audience and restoring some sense of his former dignity with his suicide. The evil mask of banality is torn off to expose fully its deceit and lies, ultimately diminishing its power in the face of good. Please remember to click the bell below and subscribe.